Hi, Mike Kennedy here. We're watching Alone again this year. This is season 7, I believe. We're into this is the 4th or 5th show called The Rock. Spoiler, spoiler. We're going to talk about things. If you haven't seen the episode, you might not want to watch this. Well, we finally encounter someone getting some big game, which is interesting because, of course, taking down a major game animal with a bow and arrow is kind of something anyway to me, but having it maybe just injured and needing to go in and finish it by hand, that's kind of even more amazing. Brings up the situation that they're in a setting where it's starting to get cold. Winter is coming, and in the last part of the show they actually show the snow on the ground, but there's a problem with procuring a lot of food at once, and of course that's storage. Now there are different, more primitive techniques to take care of that. One of them is smoking. You can smoke certain foods. We have someone who smoked a bunch of fish, and unfortunately, because of this issue of food storage, a bear decided he would like those fish better, and even though he had put them up on a, kind of a supposedly a way that a bear couldn't get it, the bear got it. And this guy that took down the major game, he leaves it because it's like a huge animal. He can't carry it all back, so he has to carry it back in pieces. And while that piece is out there, there's some animals that have been chewing on it. So, but he's gotten most of the meat back. But one of the advantages to the situation is actually for the big game is it's cold. So this meat isn't going to spoil. It's going to be eventually, I think, frozen. But you still have to protect it somehow. So it's going to be interesting to see how this individual decides is the best way to protect this meat, because obviously this is enough meat for a person to go through the entire winter with. I mean, obviously you just want to be eating one thing, but you know what I'm saying. This is a substantial amount of food that he's gotten. What I've noticed is, I'm not dumping on people in earlier seasons, but the last few seasons we've seen what I would say is some more real experts. In other words, a lot of the shows before were populated by YouTuber survival people. Some of these people even taught survival, but they didn't necessarily have a lot of real world experience, to some extent, if I can say that, except what they did themselves. In other words, they learned techniques and practiced them, went out and did them, and different things like that. But they were never in situations where they had to depend on that, and they were using those techniques a lot. What we've seen here in the later few seasons, I don't know if it's because the show's become more popular or they're digging for more people. And of course, the prize for this year is $1 million. So I think they're pulling out people with a different set of skills. And so this guy that's taken down this big game, then he's talking about it, and he sounds like he's a really expert hunter, and he says he's the best hunter on the face of the earth. Well, I doubt that that's necessarily true, but he is obviously very, very skilled to take down an animal, a major animal with a bow and arrow. And then you have the whole problem of you get this huge animal. You have to gut it and prepare it, because if you just leave it there, the food's going to be useless. So he has to do that. He puts some things over and some rocks and things to try to keep the other animals away from it. But very skilled person. And last season, 2 seasons ago, someone took down a moose, and then again you hear that guy talking. Well, he lived in Siberia for a while, and he went moose hunting, so he had all of the skills. Now, probably in that situation, he was probably using a gun, not a bow and arrow, but I'm not sure. But he was very familiar with how to take down big game, but also is equally as important as what to do with it after you've got it. All of a sudden, you've got, you got 100 pounds, a couple hundred pounds of meat what are you going to do with it? How are you going to preserve it? How are you going to take it out? If you don't get the entrails out right properly, they can contaminate the food and it will spoil quicker. Oh, I've got an itchy nose today. Itchy nose means you're going to have a fight, so watch out. Itchy palms mean you're going to come into money. That's always something my mom said. I don't know where she got it from. But so, and then in one other season where they did the beast, Alone the Beast, where they had killed the game animal, and then this crew of 3 people went to the animal and then tried to survive for 3 days. The one that I thought was the most interesting was the woman was a hunter. There were 2 men and a woman, and both the 2 men went out and stuck her alone. But I didn't think they could have survived without her anyway. When she came to that animal, she knew exactly what to do. And she knew exactly how to do it. And I'm sure that, I'm not saying someone else couldn't have done it, but she had this expertise to do it effectively and quickly, which is a big deal. Now, in this last season where this guy takes down a musk ox, this thing is huge. And he's actually butchering it, and it's hard work. He's talking about how tired he's getting and everything, because it's a lot of work. You get an animal, I guess they can weigh like 800 pounds, but you've got a lot of things to cut through if you're expecting to take some of this back. The hindquarters are different pieces that, they're heavy. And of course, he's quite a ways from camp. Didn't have the decency to, show up at his camp and him shoot it and it drop into the a meat pit where he's going to store it or something. But another thing I think is very interesting, there's always this issue of shelters. Do you go with a minimal shelter, or do you build a shelter that's going to last, theoretically, for a couple of years? And I think the truth is in between there some way, where now one of the seasons when they did the 2 people, they had 2 brothers, and they had decided right off that they were going to do a minimal shelter, and they would concentrate all in their efforts on collecting food and stuff like that instead. And they actually won, and they had a nominal shelter. And I honestly thought they were going to lose because it showed them fighting with each other and everything. Because, of course, they do creative editing, and they're going to edit it in such a way to not present to you too soon who is going to actually win. They did this on the series that Fowler, who was from Maine, from my state, won. They really didn't show that much footage of him. And it was kind of like, well, I don't think they did because he was doing so well. And they had more people doing other things and not doing so well, which made for interesting TV. And then this guy kind of comes in at the end and wins it. But so you have the same thing again. There's one person now that it's been a month. They're a third of the way through the 100 days. And he's just now starting to build what he's considering a more permanent shelter. And he's just been using a tarp before, and it's been driving him crazy. The wind, it's leaking, all these different things. But some of these people are building shelters that are just too big. And too big shelters means that you're expending way too many calories building it, and it's going to be much harder to heat and maintain. I mean, it would be different if you actually were going to plan to live there a long time. But the thing is here is it needs to be robust, of course, because you don't know how much snow you're going to get, so it has to be sturdy. You can't just, have a tarp set up. But there's more of a mid-ground between how sturdy this thing needs to be to last for years and years, or is it going to be something that you can put up more easily that's going to easily last through the winter, and you're only going to really be using it for this 100 days. So you see that, I kind of would say, mistake being made. One series, I had 2 very accomplished people, and they husband-wife team on this, the same one the brothers were on, and they built a really nice shelter. They basically built a cabin. When they got done with this thing, it was like, they're going to put in an outhouse in and running water too. I mean, it was really, really good. But they have worn themselves out. They expended a lot of calories, and they really didn't have the food intake to justify that much expenditure on the cabin, and they had to go out. The woman, who we later found out. Maybe it was in the same show. She comes back in another season, but she has some significant medical problems, and it just did her in. And so there that issue, and then the other thing that was kind of interesting is, I'm not going to say it's slate, but it seems to be in some of the sites are all picked at random. They actually eat a cupcake and it's got a number in it, and then it tells them where they're going to be left off. And there's all of this rock, and there's like an outcropping of it, and the rock is about 2 or 3 inches thick, but it's very flat on each side, and it's some of it's like a foot or more across, but basically you've got these building blocks that are really easy to do things with. You just can pile them on top of each other, and they're going to stay. It's not like trying to make something with odd size, like making a fireplace with odd size rocks. You're going to have a lot of difficulties. You're going to have a lot of holes. Well, with this, and 2 people did it, and maybe the other people it isn't in their area, but they made really, really nice fireplaces, and also using them as a heat sink. In other words, you're going to heat that rock up, and even after the fire's gone out, that heat is going to be radiated back into the shelter. But they were able to make some really good fire pits, or chimneys or whatever with this rock. And one person even spackles it with clay, and it talks about she wants to do it really soon because she knows the clay is going to freeze. And they point out clay has got like 30% water in it, so in fact, yes, when the ground starts to freeze, you won't be digging up any more clay. But she makes this a really nice fireplace with it, and it's really something to have such a good building material present. If you had to pick, what would I want to find that would help me make a fireplace, or a pit, or whatever you're going to call it, rocket stove, whatever you're going to make, in the wild, you can't go wrong with this rock that they found. It was just really, really good. And sure, it's heavy carrying it there and stuff like that, but I think it was well worth what they ended up with at the end. And so anyway, that's what's happening in Alone. We get the large game. We get the problem of storing foods and predators coming and deciding that they want your food. The guy doing some of the fish, I said, he's been getting a lot of fish, but then his fish are stolen by a bear. And then we have this thing about the shelters, which I found very interesting. But even still, again, we have something different too, which I've noticed in other episodes too. The people who win are the people who want the money. They're really centered on the prize. In other words, the only way they get the money is to get to the end. Now, some people go into this situation thinking, I want to prove something to myself. I want to test myself. Well, some of those people, even though they seem like they were doing really well, go out really early because, they get lonely, they're missing their mates or their family and different things, and they just figure, they talk themselves into it saying, well, I came here to prove what I came here for. I think I tested myself. I guess I proved this, I proved that, I proved that. And so, they rationalize and they push the button and go out. But, the other people are like saying, I need the money. I've got to go to the end. They're the ones, at least I've seen for watching the shows, they're the ones that seem like they really end up being the winners because they have the eye on the prize and they know the only way to get it is to go the distance. It's not just a matter of getting out there and saying, well, yeah, no, I've had a good time. I proved I could build a shelter and start fires and this and that. It's time for me to go. But so very interesting again. It'd be interesting to see what happens next season because some of the show had been getting really stale, and I think that's why it's good. They've got this another level of people in there that have a lot of real experience as far as what I'm seeing as far as hunting and everything. And I think that makes the show more interesting again because, frankly, just watching people sit around and starve to death, kind of, the person who loses the least body mass is the one that's going to end. That's kind of what the show became into. So now we're seeing higher levels of skill, doing things, and and they're explaining the expertise they have. So it's made the show more interesting again. Tell me what you think. Bye.